all these things that he's accomplished, and he had specifically, like, very poignantly said, like, my greatest accomplishment is my family, and that was really cool because, like, 10 years ago that probably wouldn't have meant much to me, but like now at this point in my life with a little guy, it's like, okay, I understand that, because it's like every day you're like, we made that thing.
What does it mean to plant your flag? It means you're not afraid.
It means you're passionate about what you do.
It means you're here to serve others.
In business, in life.
In good and bad.
You aren't afraid to fly your colors proudly because you know
you serve a greater purpose. This is the Plant Your Flag podcast with Mike Bean and Jeremy Mountain.
Hello and welcome back. It's the Plant Your Flag podcast with your two favorite media professionals, Mike Bean and Jeremy Mountain. I'm back. It's been a while.
I'm excited.
Yeah, we got a lot
This is fun.
We got a lot to get to. We got a recap. Yeah. We're recapping. If you've seen, we did do a recap a couple of episodes ago. We're going to try and basically come back every few episodes so we can kind of go back and give you a little feedback on what we gathered. Mike obviously has hosted the majority of the last few episodes. My last one was with Jim from Creative Kitchens and Baths, which was a while ago now.
You had a little hiatus there. Yeah. Some news.
Yeah, and just to give you a little update, I haven't been around because I was taking care of the little Keebmeister, Kian, my new son. He's now 5 months old.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And we'll talk a little bit about that and just sort of our backstage pass of what that was like to sort of conquer, I believe, the first family leave in Bean media history.
Yeah, I mean, it was the first I can recall, and certainly the first edition.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, little bean sprout.
Right, he's a little bean sprout. I love it.
There's so
in the mountain.
Yeah, it was a little bit nerve-wracking to head into that period. We sort of had to figure some things out, and it wasn't easy for me to kind of like step away, even though there was enough for me to do to distract myself. Like there was enough there.
Real life, but no, I get that.
Yeah, there was enough, but it wasn't easy knowing like, all right, how long should I, be out for? Kind of thinking about coming back from hybrid and then working remote and sort of getting back into the swing of things and covering some things, but like. From your angle, like as a business owner, what was it like to sort of, I guess, have to endure something like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that, I've been through so many different eras of the company. We're about to hit 19 years in just a couple months. You hit 10 years just not too long ago, just last month.
Yeah.
Which is the longest employee that I've ever had, and we have a certain chemistry. So I knew not having you around was going to be a huge change.
Right.
But I tried, and I knew that you were working tirelessly leading up to it to make sure that we were best prepared for it. And you don't get that from everybody. It's just more of like, hey, peace out. I'm doing my thing.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah.
But I do want to commend you for how much time and energy you put into making sure that we were set and ready.
Yeah.
So we had some checks and balances in place, and I worked a lot because it just didn't make a ton of sense to hire somebody for a short period of time. That was train something. And so
and like
I
even Fiverr or something like that would be just to have someone come in and sort of maintain was not, and it was like I felt like it was my responsibility to do that because I don't know, it's like yes. There's an aspect of like having a kid that's like, well, sorry, I got other stuff to do, but also it's like it's kind
of an important thing.
Yeah, and when it's a small business and like I put myself in a position to have so many little keys and impactful things in terms of like ad campaigns and structure and strategy, that it was like, okay, well, I need to make sure everyone's informed. This is what we need to do when I'm out, because otherwise, like, this is the blessing and the curse of being a part of a small, organization, is like it's only a couple steps away from like drastic measures.
Sure,
like, so there's
sure.
that like kind of balancing act in fear.
Yeah.
That's why we love talking to these other people.
Yeah.
Is hearing like we're not alone.
Yeah. Right.
And like regardless of industry, we have so many different industries of these last few guests. It really speaks to like there's a certain I don't know, even spiritual level of like,
Right.
all right, balancing professional and books and responsibilities. And I don't know, I just felt like it was a little bit nerve-wracking to step away because it was like, I don't know what's going to happen if I go out, you know,
Yeah,
but
you
we
play
made
the
it.
usual. Yeah, and we did make it through, and you know, I'm sure there was a couple of balls that got dropped here and there, but I think for the most part, because of the way that you set us up, you know, we were in good shape. And you know, and it's just kind of all part of the, you know, running a business, owning a business, and that's why I think it is pertinent to what we talk about on this platform.
Totally.
Yeah,
And even like new opportunities, like having to sort of like, all right, I want to jump on these, but like, you know,
I know.
coming back, you know, now we've got a lot of new exciting opportunities with some of our new clients. So it's been, you know, really fulfilling to sort of get over the hump and then now sort of have a whole fresh new not only perspective from my personal life, but a fresh
ocean.
Yeah, and a totally new roster of clients, some new, some old, and
Yeah, some came back.
Yeah,
which is really, really cool.
Yeah, so that's been exciting. But bottom line, we're back.
Yeah,
the duo is back, and we wanted to, once again, we want to go back kind of, we recommend you go and check out these episodes, but if you needed a little bit more of a push, that's why we wanted to sort of do these recaps to gather a little bit of our own understanding from, you know, Mike hosting the majority of these, but then myself having, you know, watched the episodes and not been in the seat hosting, but as a viewer, as you would be, just to give you a little bit of my feedback on some. So the first one here is Ania, who is obviously
Ania Duchon,
multifaceted.
Yeah, it was incredible to be able to listen to her story. I knew a good portion of it. Krishiki Bakery, it's so well known.
Everybody's been at Stolat in the last couple of years. Like you just keep everybody
wild.
from every walk of life has been to Stolat and said, "Well, have you been to Stolat?"
Yeah, I know. And like leading up to the podcast, there was, I think I told her 3 different people who said that they met a business connection. With the span of like a week, maybe a week and a half, at Stolat. And it's a great place. I've met there for a couple different business meetings, and she did a fantastic job. And it's no shock when we got to sit down and talk about her interest in interior design and that she had such a hand in it. But what was shocking was the way that she was brought to the United States.
Right.
From Poland. You know, her family, essentially her parents, they were looking for something better out of their life, and they wanted to say basically to their kids and kind of shelter them at a very young age and say, we're going to be leaving you with some family and we're going to be taking a trip without really an end game in mind.
Yeah.
And now she looks back at it a little bit differently, but at that time they really didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
But then like the whole like Chernobyl thing, you know, then that was the catalyst that took them to the States, got them their visa. There was no choice. They had to leave in 1986. You know, that was a catastrophic event.
Yeah.
And to have to kind of go through all of that and leave that kind of chaos to come to someplace completely new and not even know English. To see where she is right now is truly inspiring. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, and like I think it speaks to the spirit of people that aren't afraid to plant their flag. I mean, that's sort of the ultimate, you know, transfer of culture, and to then take that and build off of it and build a new, she calls it, you know, the Anya's empire.
Yeah.
I think, you know, she's very inspiring, and she's we talk about like right in the beginning of the podcast, like, you know, having a bigger purpose, or knowing that your purpose is greater than just what you do for a living. That's, I think, a great example of where she took some of her experience and familial experience and has now built things that other people are able to enjoy. And she, like, one thing that I remember her mentioning was just like, just if somebody had a bad day and wants to have a cinnamon bun and sit in her car, like, that's vision. Like, that's her, that's a small aspect of a greater vision of, like, just wanting to make the world a better place, or wanting people to have a better experience. And
there's not too many times that you eat a pastry and, you know, maybe you're eating them to, you know, push away some negative thoughts or whatever. But most of the time there's a smile.
I know
on
my
your
wife
face.
and I do a lot of that.
Yeah.
A lot of that.
Right.
We always have to go get our little treats. We're going to have to take a trip out there, because I don't think I've actually been to Krishiki.
Because, they're in the place. If you walk in the door to the left, there's the bar and the restaurant, and then to the right is there's a bakery presence.
Okay.
There.
Yeah, we're going to have to check it out. And she talked a lot about how it was just a shell in the old Eastern Hills Mall. And I think, like, that speaks to, like, vision. And, like, I'm a huge fan of malls, but it's unfortunate to see them just, like, disappearing right here on the boulevard. They're sort of just disappearing. But to refill that skeleton with life and with vision,
some vibrancy,
and create a space or an arena for just, like, good vibes, I think is really, really impressive.
There was one thing that I did mess up on that episode, and I had mentioned there was a personality on, it was actually 107.1, The Wolf, which used to be alternative radio that we used to listen to at our office all the time. To the point that it was just like the same songs over and over.
Yeah.
And I think it was like you and Colin were like, we can't take this any longer.
Yeah.
So she left, this personality left 106.5. So I said 106.5 twice. That woman, she talks quite a bit about Krishiki, and she talks about, like, Polish recipes and things like that. So that is a correction that I would like to put on the record.
Yeah. And one more note on that. It was interesting, when you asked her about advice for other people, she had mentioned, like, you had asked her about what advice would you give yourself 20 years ago, and she had said, like, be a sponge, listen, and then she got into balance, and how she had recently heard and did not like the term, owning a business versus a business owning you. And I'm sure that is something that speaks to you.
Yeah.
As an owner, that concept of, like, a business owning you, and it could feel like that, I'm sure, sometimes.
It does. And I think if you're in the wrong field, maybe it's torture.
Right.
But I love what I do. I get great gratification out of the successes. I learn from the things that don't go so well. And I just love it. So it's like time slips away for me. And
right.
That's the thing I've got to protect myself and my family from.
Right.
Is the fact that I can get lost in what I'm doing after 3, 4, 5 hours.
Yeah.
And, like, when it gets past 2, 3, then I'm like, okay, well, now I'm neglecting things I should be paying attention to. So
yeah, and that can be a challenge.
Yeah.
And then the next one, Reverend Frederick Marschner. I mean,
that was loaded.
Yeah. Super, super, super cool. I feel like if you haven't heard of this episode, it's certainly worth checking out. Mike literally had a mini psychic reading right on the air.
Yeah, and it brought tears to my eyes. It was unbelievable. I think he knew where he was going with the conversation, and he was kind of waiting for my blessing to go further.
Right.
And I didn't. Full disclosure, nothing was when we talk to people before they come on this, we ask them if they share it on social, and he doesn't do a ton of stuff on social media.
Yeah,
I had a naysayer say that there is a good chance that he probably just researched me before. Some of the things he brought up, I don't do a lot of personal things on social media.
Right.
Neither does my family,
and neither did the people that he mentioned.
No, not at all. And he, man, it cut.
Yeah.
And I still get chills thinking about it.
For
it
sure.
was wild. And just the way that he's able to be responsible about what he calls like a calling.
Yeah.
And separating that and understanding that it's unethical to do a reading while he's being paid by insurance.
Right.
As a therapist is just very impressive. And he also, to go one step further, does exorcisms for free because he feels like it's something that should never be charged for. Go one step further, found out that my wife, she actually knows somebody who he did an exorcism for. I had no idea any of this stuff leading into it.
Yeah.
It was just one of those things like, it was, she told me like, that story sounds familiar.
Yeah.
My wife. And I'm like, well, what are the odds, right? And to find out that his first name, she said, I think his name was Fred.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, there's only so many exorcists named Fred around.
Yeah, it's not Krueger.
Yeah.
Right.
And when you told me about it, I was out on leave. I think I may have just started to come back at like a part-time remote basis. But when you told me, I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, when is he coming in? I was all jealous because I was like, I want to do that one.
I know. Yeah.
But I mean, just personally, like, I am super, like, I don't know. I'm someone who certainly believes in that sort of stuff and just the concept of, overcoming darkness, overcoming entities and things of that nature. It's something that I truly believe in, and I'm happy to say I feel like I've been able to step away from some of those things, but I feel like you're always susceptible to them. And just the concept of, like, he was talking about spirit guides and angels and demons, and it's stuff that a lot of people probably roll their eyes at and maybe are even afraid to admit they might be afraid of it. But I think, like, seeing someone like him as a legitimate, like, spiritual warrior was just inspiring to know that there's people out there that are really doing it, because I think there's a definite crossover between, like, social work and spiritual work, and that's sort of what the whole episode was about. But ultimately, like, to know that there's someone out there helping other people, because sometimes it can feel like you really are alone and you can't speak to someone, and I think that's the benefit of speaking to someone in the psychiatry or psychology space is you get to talk to someone that doesn't have any skin in the game or any biases in your life. And then through doing that, there is a certain, like, almost like just like confession in the church where you sort of offloading that energy. But to hear that there's someone out there that's truly doing that, you start to wonder, like, why isn't there more of that? And to hear that he's kind of like breaking outside of the system that is developed in terms of insurance and things of that nature, it was like to really just, like, nail it home. We have a colleague or, somewhat of a connection, Brandon Trusso, who's a comedian.
Yeah, I mean, my wife, I think she went to school with him or something like that.
Both of us
both follow him.
Yeah,
he's funny.
Yeah, we've both sort of had
Comedian.
like a social media connection with this Brandon Trusso, and when we posted the podcast, he commented on it, and that Brandon had gotten sober like years ago, and I had been following him on social media, and he certainly, like, inspired me a little bit. And to see, like, him speak so highly of Frederick, that he had helped change his life, it was like
it was very impactful,
just crazy. So I mean, that one has got to be in the top 3 of my favorites, anyways.
That's
in terms
cool.
of guests.
I'm glad, and I'm sorry I didn't share it.
We'll bring them back around.
Yeah, it's certainly popular, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, truly, truly remarkable, and I'm glad. Thank you, Frederick, for coming on. I think it was really awesome.
Absolutely.
So Lindsey Zajac, you had a pretty good relationship with her over the years, and she's somebody who sort of stepped out on her own and is doing a lot of helping other people step out of maybe their existing jobs. But tell us a little bit about what you gathered from Lindsey's appearance.
Yeah, absolutely. So Lindsey and I had we had done some work here at Bean Media with Lindsey's company before she owned the company, and it was Career Partners International of Buffalo Niagara. So we did a little bit of social media work and some things. I met her through the Business Helping Business networking group, we stayed in touch. We weren't really close. There's like some BNSME kind of like crossover, So Buffalo's a small town, right? It's big enough, but it's small enough. So we just all of a sudden it was just like, well, why wouldn't we bring her on this?
Right.
Because she just recently purchased a company that was owned by a couple people who were very well respected in the community, and she has some big shoes to fill. She also had some experience from working in like larger companies like PepsiCo. She also had some experience working with her father's company, doing some corporate training and things like that. So initially, she was brought in to do more of the corporate training side and the leadership side, and then ended up buying out the two other partners. And she, had I can totally relate. I can completely relate to that feeling of I need to take a leap because this feels right for me. Mm-hmm. And she had full support from her partner. Her husband just backed her and didn't ask questions and said, whatever you got to do, do it. And I had that same kind of support in my life. And if it wasn't for that, this company would not exist if it wasn't for my wife. So there was that, and then there was the whole part of like the fact that people were telling her that you can't be a business owner and be a good mother at the same time. And, and I'll never forget the mission accepted.
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing. And she took it on and said, watch me go. And I love that kind of mentality because that's kind of the cloth that I'm cut from.
Right.
Is like, tell me I can't do something and I'm going to do it twice as well as you ever thought I could.
Yeah.
It was just really, really cool though. But she said that there's that mother's guilt though, always in the back of her head. And I never really thought about that growing up. Because I had a single mom, and she raised us alone, and I'm sure she probably had some of that guilt while she was working overtime and doing what she needed to do to pay the bills, like that kind of stuff. So, a lot of these conversations, they really do, they go beyond, I think, than just like the business of business. Like it opens my mind. It really does, and that's why I love doing this so much.
For sure, and like my dad would always say, like he stayed where he was because he was able to go get out and get to our practices and get to our games because his father just didn't. His father wasn't around for his games. Right. So he was like, that's one thing that I like his career. He was like, I could have went somewhere else, but that was why I stayed where I was. And like for me, like one thing that she had said when I watched was, she was talking about the current job market and like, whereas like people that are looking to get out and go somewhere, like it may have taken 3 months to find a new job a couple years ago, but like it was looking more like 6 months. And it was just like a reminder of like, for me, it's like, I feel like you have to make the most of what you have and like remain grateful. And I think like the things about this company with regards to like creative freedom and opportunity to lead and opportunity to sort of, blaze our own trail is obviously why I've continued to stay here. And I think like, it was just a reminder when she was talking about that, that's like, you think about other people and other jobs and everybody always like complains about their job, I feel like, but you it's a job. Like that's what I think you have to make the most of your job, right. Regardless of what you do or where you do it. You're never going to be happy if you take on that mentality of like, oh, this sucks. And like the grass is always greener and always looking elsewhere. But I think ultimately, like I've been able to just personally find a lot of fulfillment over 10 years now of just being a part of, your journey, your flag and continuing to forge forward. I mean, it's easy to come into work. It's not always easy, but it's easy to come in knowing like, we do have control over our destiny in a sense, and it's blessing and a curse. And it may not be for everybody, but these people that we talk to, obviously they live it every single day, and that's what this podcast is for, is to get other people out there to understand, like, it's not impossible, because there's a lot of people that are doing it. And I think that's another aspect of what I like about what we do is we take these businesses that are our clients and we compete with other bigger businesses, competitors, longer standing businesses, whether they're new or been around.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
That's the fun of it, is setting them apart.
There's like so much complacency, and I think a lot of like, oh, we're just checking the boxes, but we have a hunger in us to win.
Yeah,
you know, and that's what I think why we've clicked for as many years as we have.
Yeah, and to be a part of inspiring that, and just give a backup, give a team, give some moral support here and there, and some belief, and just sort of backup. I think that's what's really interesting. Mm-hmm. Paul Chisholm, another person that you've known. I feel like he's almost a mentor to you, and
absolutely,
he's certainly had his hands in a lot of different businesses. Personally, I thought it was really interesting, his story about when he was in his first business, which was manufacturing, and he had no experience, but he was finding himself not being able to connect with the people on this production line that also happened to be mainly female. And he had noticed like another employee, and he had just like been able to witness like that when this particular employee connected with them, that they resonated, and they were resonating in a way that just wasn't happening with him. And he had to sort of hand it off, and he put that guy in charge. And ultimately he said he saw production go through the roof. And I just thought that was really cool, because, you know, I talk a lot about quarterbacking in terms of leadership, and, you know, you're not always going to be able to get through to that person the way that someone else might be able to get through to them. And I think it's important to sort of share that responsibility, or share that voice in the huddle, or in the workplace, or wherever you are, because sometimes leadership is allowing others to lead. And I think that was what was really interesting about that story.
Yeah, I think the reason why that stuck with him is just for that reason, is that I think that was a lesson, whether he voiced it that way or not. It was an eye-opening experience where I think everybody in some kind of leadership position has to realize that you can't do it all yourself, and you might not be the best person for that gig.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And I you know, it's not an easy thing to do, because like I was raised with the mentality of if you want it done right, do it yourself.
Right.
And you know, that's probably not a healthy way to live.
Well,
but it makes sense to so many people, because it's like, well, I know I want it this way, but if you can teach somebody to do it this way, and you can have a written process, and like that's what he was talking about as well, is beyond delegation, but also documentation, and making sure the process is well documented, so that, you know, that's why franchise do it that way. That's why, you know, the biggest corporations in the world have a document of processes. So whether you're starting on your own and make, you know, whether it's a little, you know, pizzeria, or whether it's a huge factory, you know, franchise or whatever it may be, as long as you've got your system in place, then it's going to be repeatable.
Yes.
And you know, and also that once you have that system in place, then you're going to be able to sleep better at night knowing that people are following said system.
Yes, and I think it definitely it adds up for marketing too, because there's things that you can have automated, and there's algorithms, and there's
until Google and Meta changes everything.
But there's certainly is like the more systemic you can make something when it comes down to processes, teams, strategies, that just makes it allows you to grow, I think, because like we talk about a lot in terms of like paid advertising. If everything is in experimentation mode, but once something is flowing, then you can scale it. And then we're going to have to experiment over here now, because just because this one's working doesn't mean that's the end of our job, because ultimately if we want to make more money, we need more investment from the client. We have to continue to prove to them that these things are working. But part of that is knowing that these systems and these algorithms, they're not going to work without human intervention and creativity. And this one is working. That means we can now start a new experiment and allow these things to work for us.
Yeah, and I was told when I first started doing SEO that it's a balance between art and science. And I think the art is the experiment, and the custom writing, and the science is the structure. So it really does it does track back to what we do every day.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We have 3 more, and the next one is Joe Nicastro.
Yeah, Joe was awesome. Our history goes way back, and he. I wish I would have gotten to talk to him more. We only have such, we have 30 minutes or so, 40 minutes.
Yeah, we're not the Joe Rogan of Buffalo.
No.
We don't have 3.5 hours.
No, not yet.
As a matter of fact, I'm glad you didn't bring your phone in, because it's probably rang 17 times since we've been in here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I could almost feel it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, where's that thing? But yeah, no, it's with Joe Nicastro, he, very inspiring. He took a leap in during COVID. He's a very young partner of a law firm. But he got his, kind of his start before his legal profession in the music world. And I wish I could have asked him a little bit more about some of his experience in London, because I was well aware of it. I was playing a part, with them. I was making music videos with them and like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Helping them campaign for, to win that Hard Rock is Calling. And the fact that he opened for Paul McCartney and Pearl Jam in London in front of 40, 50,000 people. Was one thing we really just touched on. So at some point, once again, like we talked about, we're going to have to get back to that at some point.
Yeah.
And we're not doing, like, he's got his own internal marketing team. He brought, somebody in here with him to take some pictures and take some videos. We shared some of the stuff with them. So we don't need to cross streams in that regard. We can still maintain a relationship and be close. We don't need to do business with him, but it was awesome to catch up with him and kind of hear some of those scary little steps that he had to take.
Right.
As like COVID was just starting to cook, and he was about to start a business, which keeps resurfacing. It's wild. It was 5 years ago now, pretty much to the day.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. And like, it was also interesting, like, musician, lawyer, but then even deeper,
philanthropist.
Yeah, starting a foundation that allows him to like take some of the revenue that he's generating and difference that he's making and put it back, like, once again, the plant your flag thing, serving a greater purpose. That's where, like, I don't know how much more multifaceted you can get, but to be a musician, I mean, I saw him. I was walking down the I don't know, whatever of the football stadium out at New Era Field, I guess, the concourse. I was stumbling through there a couple years ago at halftime, and I looked up and I saw him playing with the Strictly Hip, and I'm like, hey, there's Joe Nicastro. And then I went and got another beer. But the guy is just like, everywhere. And I wasn't aware of his foundation, but to hear that was just, really interesting. And you love to see that when someone takes their own success and then, creates success for others and just balances
just
in that
wants
way.
To feel good about what they're doing.
Yeah. And then cool. All that being said, like, all these things that he's accomplished, and he had specifically, like, very poignantly said, like, my greatest accomplishment is my family. And that was really cool, because, like, 10 years ago, that probably wouldn't have meant much to me. But, like, now at this point in my life with a little guy, it's like, okay, I understand that, because it's like every day you're like, that's that we made that thing.
I never brought this up to you. Yeah, you did. And I'm telling you, if you, I'm gonna buy one in every size of Hold My Juice Box.
Oh yeah, because family photo.
Yeah, like, well, that, and then what I want him to be wearing that when he takes his first steps.
Yes,
like here, hold my beer, watch me go, kind of thing.
My mother-in-law,
like, Hold My Juice Box.
My mother-in-law is like, she's just repeating that video, because I'll show you. I shared it with the song But like I commented in the real video, and I'm like saying what he's saying. I'll have to show you.
Yeah, I'll
but
check that out.
I'll have to write this down. But I got that from a place right here on the boulevard called Kid to Kid, and I love thrifting. But now I get to thrift for the kid.
Oh, that's cool.
And we're gonna have to try and find out who the owner is, because I think it's a great idea, and it's certainly like, I mean, like we'll get like 15 things from there for maybe $50, and then go to like Carter's and get like 3 for like $50, and it's like he's gonna wear it for.
No, I've
2 months.
I've been on like a mad dash for like a gift before.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'll just run over to Carter's because it's so close. And I'm just like, all right, whatever. Here's all of it. Here's my card. And I'm like,
okay. Yeah, exactly. And then like there's stuff at this Kid to Kid that looks like it didn't even fit the kid that it was owned by. So,
probably because they probably grew up. Yeah. Wrong season, whatever it might be.
But Jared Byer,
yeah.
that was like the first one after I went out on leave, and like I was watching it, and he talked about tech overload, and he was going on a tech fast.
Yeah.
And it immediately resonated with me because
perfect timing when he's coming on here.
Yeah, and like he was. So I'm somebody that does dive probably too deep into some of the stressful stuff, the war, everything going on. Like Twitter, like the last couple of years is just like, okay, I can watch the war now.
So toxic.
Yeah, and it is, and you feel somewhat like, I don't know, somebody like me is like, I was actually just talking with Andrea about like, sometimes it feels like somebody's got to watch it. Somebody's got to be able to like tell people what's going on, and like that can get toxic, and that can get like, it can drain you. And twofold. One, like having a kid now is such a healthy distraction, because sometimes I'm just like, I got this. I don't need to worry about that right now.
Yeah.
But then you're also like, I kind of got to worry about this, because that's the world he's going into.
Right.
But when he said he was talking about that stress and how that can affect your fitness, I was just looking up, like, why do I have this gut? And I read that cortisol and stress can cause belly fat. And I just never knew that scientifically can have an effect on something like your body. And like, it makes sense. I mean, they talk about these kids now with like gamer body, where they like wear these headphones too much, and their skull like starts to like get like misformed. And
they're just saying Baby Ruth over and over.
Yeah, but like that was sort of eye opening, and like it makes sense. Like his purpose being like getting into some of these companies and talking about healthy work-life balance, because we were just saying like finding that balance and not letting the business run you, and like you were saying, like making sure that it doesn't get away from you.
Yeah.
And it can be difficult sometimes. So it certainly is valuable to have him like speaking to a company about that stuff.
Yeah, and him, like, you know, before he even came in here, he gave 3 presentations, I think. I was just like, you're not like
yeah. He had to have a couple Red Bulls.
But no, he was great, and he did a really nice job of just kind of breaking some things down and putting them in ways that I never really thought of them. And I love that movement as medicine kind of thing. And you always feel better when you exercise.
Yeah,
you don't want to go into it, but you know, once you do, you always feel better. And knowing him from the past, and you know, as a personal trainer and like group training and like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It was neat to see him take that evolution into what he's doing today, and being able to share his knowledge with so many different people, and then also talking about the business side of, you know, why he jumped into it, why he planted his flag.
Yeah,
it was a lot of things that went in and around seeing things done the wrong way, and that stems from business practices all the way up to just real life kind of movement.
Yeah.
You know, so he saw it from a bunch of different perspectives, and he seems like he's living his best life. I can't believe it was 13 years since I thought it was just maybe like 5 years.
Yeah.
But then when he said on the podcast, he's like, yeah, my twins are 13. Yeah. I was just like, wow. Okay. It's been a lot longer than I thought. So but no, it's once again, it just boils back to like such a small community, and it's really cool to be able to connect with people on this platform.
Yeah, and he obviously had an impact on you and your journey back then, or else he wouldn't have been back around on the podcast.
No, yeah, I wouldn't have thought of him if he didn't have some kind of impactful kind of impression on my brain.
I think that as we get to our last one here, Jim from Creative Kitchens, he was talking as we were like warming up before we got on.
Wait, it's my turn. I get to ask you. You're the guest now.
That's right.
Yeah. So, Jeremy, why don't you tell me a little bit about Jim? How was that experience with you? Because it seemed pretty interesting that he had kind of taken a bit of a leap, and some past connections really helped him out.
Well, like I feel like it was like there was some connection with fantasy football that he was talking about. I think him and Steve were
like they stayed in touch for once again. It was like 15 years or something. Like they went dormant. They really didn't do anything other than fantasy.
Right. And like he knew him, but it was like a long time before there was actually like a professional connection. And that was like sort of a takeaway from that episode is just like whether someone is a client or a colleague or a boss or whatever, like even when we first met, like I was applying for the video job, you told me flat out, like I need someone with After Effects. I was like, I don't know that. But later on, you needed a content writer and I was more comfortable with that. And that led to an opportunity. And I feel like it was a reminder when Jim was talking about that of like, you don't want to burn bridges, but also like, that impact, you can always have an impact, and that impact might not be felt for months, years, decades, but ultimately, like, from him going from, like, working in another showroom as an employee to then getting an opportunity to be a business owner, that just, I feel like that is just, like, you have to believe in yourself and stay true to yourself. And one of the things he was talking about was just not being afraid to take risks. And you could see it come through. Like he's a really like interesting and animated storyteller. So I feel like I recommend that episode because it's sort of eye-opening to see someone just be themselves and succeed as themselves and not need to reinvent themselves or not need to trust anybody but themselves. And he really grew up into now someone who owns a business with 2 locations. The other thing that I think resonated with me and what we do as like once again a business that there is no one sort of looking over our shoulder or telling us how to develop these processes, but he had said something about how I asked him like how he had changed or what was different from the beginning till now. And he said like really just like wearing several different hats. And whereas he might have just been selling in the beginning, now he's selling, he's doing deliveries, he's onboarding people, he's training people, he's setting people like up with the right designer. I think that was just something that resonated with me because like as we said, like you had to wear a couple of my hats when I was out. There's times where I've tried to be like, all right, Mike, I can wear that hat. You don't need to wear that hat. If we want to grow, we're all going to have to develop talent beneath, the top of the food chain or pyramid or whatever you want to look at it like. I think that you have to be multifaceted in any business or in any industry. All these people clearly developed a multifaceted approach to what they do. I mean, Ania, Frederick, Lindsey, Paul, Joe, Jared, Jim, every single one of these people, they forged their own path, but they also proved that they can shift and be balanced and do different things when they needed to.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a great way to sum everything up. I wanted to make another note on Jim's thing, but I don't want to get in the way of that summary.
Well, you knew Steve for years. You went all the way back with...
We went to Philmont, New Mexico together.
You guys did the Man vs. Wild thing together.
Yeah, at 13. I look back on it now, and I'm like, you've got to be shitting me.
Yeah, I don't know if they'd let you do that now.
13 years old, and they basically had 2 adults with us. There was 10, I think, boys. Scouts. And they just let us off into the tail end of the Rocky Mountains in New Mexico. Like, it wasn't technically part of the Rocky, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it was like New Mexico mountains. And
It's like the Revenant.
It was 75 miles in 10 days.
Yeah.
And they gave me this
fucking
piece of
Oregon
paper.
Trail.
They gave me this piece of paper, and they're like, this is what you need to show every single time you show up to your ration station.
Yeah.
Or else your troop doesn't get food.
Yeah.
So I had to hold on to this thing with I slept with this thing.
Yeah.
It went everywhere with me. It was in a Ziploc bag. And it was my job as a troop leader to do this.
Yeah.
And the fact that they just allowed this to happen. I mean, obviously the adults were probably there. They probably told us we're in charge.
Yeah.
Lord of the Flies kind of shit.
Yeah.
But Steve and I we went through a lot. It wasn't easy. To think about just 75 just up and down mountains.
Oh yeah.
75 miles in 10 days.
Yeah, that's crazy.
At 13. Yeah. So, we go a while back, so we have a little bit of trust between each other. But what I was going to say more is the corporate, him moving from the corporate world.
Yeah.
And then kind of maybe being locked in a box.
Right.
And then now branching out to all the things that you were talking about that all of these other people share.
Yeah.
So it's very cool to just kind of see you didn't think that this kind of business life was possible. Yeah,
no,
because you came
not
from
when
the
you're
corporate
standing
world.
in JCPenney, wondering what you're going to do with your communication degree.
Yeah,
and now we're hooking up cameras and hooking up podcast equipment and interviewing people, and it's you work hard enough and you get to do the fun stuff. I think that's what it boils down to.
Yeah.
And this serves a purpose too, because it gives us content, it gives some of these people some content, and ultimately, hopefully it's inspiring somebody out there.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I mean, I think that would be the most joyous thing if somebody ended up leaving a comment and said, you know what, I was on the fence and I just said, I'm doing it.
Yeah. I forgot to say, make sure to comment and subscribe.
Yeah.
I was supposed to say that in the beginning. I'm rusty.
It's all fine. It's
been a while.
It's all right. I'm excited to have you back. It's good stuff, man. Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for listening. Make sure you comment, subscribe, tell somebody about the Plant Your Flag podcast, and check out some of these episodes. Let us know what you think.
We'll see you next time.